All that happened yesterday is no longer present, and all that might happen in the future is not present. The gift is right now. So I'm fully present. Amanda, I'm ready.
Yes, good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining me on this special edition of Your Two Cents. I am your host, Amanda Love, and we have the pleasure of speaking with Dr. Fatima Hafiz of the T Group. This is a special edition for a special queen whose presence is much needed in our urban community. And I'm so grateful to have you on, Dr. Fatima. How have you been?
Oh, it's an honor. And I've been wonderful. Every day is a new day. And sometimes it's like real with what you're facing. And sometimes it's like, oh, I'm here today and I am in such gratitude. So I've been well.
Great. And I am grateful. Speaking of gratitude, I am extremely grateful to have connected with you finally. And I read that you have been on your self healing journey for over 35 years.
You did,
I
yes.
Yes, and I also read that you moved a little bit when you were younger. So can you tell me what that self healing journey like? How did that come about? Come about? Like when did you realize that you needed to go, within to heal?
Yeah, yeah. So it's probably been a bit longer than that. I think I was about 19 years old,
Mm-hmm.
and I knew that I was pretty quiet, and I did a lot of internal conversations. Thank God I didn't go crazy with it. And so, like by the time I got 20, that I wasn't like just out of my mind. But it started just being quiet and listening and not being able to speak to, adults, right? So
Mm-hmm.
when I grew up, the adults would say, children are to be seen and not heard. And so it definitely cultivated listening. So that began early on. But the journey, in terms of the internal work spiritually, started when I probably was about between 19 and 20 some odd years old. And I had gotten a book. A friend of mine gave me a book called Healing the Mind World. And it's a book by a Sufi master whose name is Hazrat Inayat Khan. And that book opened my eyes to a lot of the challenges, the mental challenges in the being as being human. And it brought me into the space of understanding something about how the mind works, how the mind heals, and why nature is so powerful in us connecting with our soul self. So I read it, I put it on the shelf, I moved a lot, I lost a lot of things, and that book stayed with me. So that my journey began in my coming to understand something about the silence. I hadn't started meditating at that time, but it told me something about the silence and about nature and about the mind. So, that's the beginning of my journey. That was the beginning of my journey.
Great. And of course, fast forward, you've been able to share that knowledge and that wisdom with people in the urban communities and to provide a safe space and place for them to face their own. If do you say shadow work? Because that's just
Yes,
something that I'm
yes,
used to saying.
yes, that's
Okay.
exactly what it is. Shadow work. Since you say that, because in my graduate studies, my focus was on love and fear and the shadows. And that
Yeah.
shadow work, it's like a discovery of the things and the ways in which we live into experiences that does not validate us, that does not help us to be our best selves. And so that's a discovery process. It's not anything anyone can teach you, but what it is when you can hone in on information and guidance that will allow you to discover what's happening inside of yourself, your own shadows. And, so yeah, you could say that.
Yes, and then so in the urban community specifically, of course we have, as you say, and I'm just, going off what I read, generational traumas,
Sorry, I didn't
right?
get nothing you said, Amanda.
Oh, can you hear
Hello?
me now? Yes,
Oh,
can you
hold
hear
on.
me?
Yes, just 1 second. I somehow. Are you there?
Yes, ma'am. Can you
Hello?
hear me?
I
Yes.
can hear you now. I can hear you. Yes. What was the last question?
I was saying that oh so currently you provide this safe space for people to deal with I think I was saying specifically in our urban community with the generational traumas that
Yes.
we've had over the years. Not that anyone is exempt from facing our traumas, but specifically with everything that we have been enslaved and things of that nature. So, when did you get the idea that that was something that you wanted to do?
Yeah. So, what I want to do in this conversation, particularly as it relates to moving towards really supporting and assisting our community and paying attention to trauma, and that it's not just the acute trauma that's happening through the gun violence and the gunshots and people being murdered, but it's a trauma that does originate for us as Black Americans, African Americans here in the during the enslavement period, and it passes on through generations, epigenetically. And when I say epigenetically, it means that we can carry it in our genes, the traumas. And so sometimes when we're dealing with things, we think it's our stuff, but sometimes it could be my grandmother's stuff, my great grandmother's stuff. It could be, one of those enslaved ancestors of mine that hasn't gotten processed and released. And so, what I'd like to share with you in terms of how I got to that journey, if you don't mind, is just talk out of two of my identities, if that's okay with you.
Oh, please do. Please do.
Is it okay? Sure.
Yes, ma'am. Please
Because
do. Yes,
yes.
no, please. Listen, I'm a student. And I'm just listening. Like, so please do.
Okay. So, if someone asked me the question like, when did you know you were a mother, right, as a woman? So, knowing that I live in the experience of a Black woman, motherhood for me, given my history, and for a lot of young women inside of urban spaces. I was raised in a somewhat rural space, but I grew up in an urban space. I grew up in Newark, New Jersey, and a lot of challenges and issues that were internal to a missing where was missing. Like I didn't grow up with a father. I grew up in a situation with a stepfather, which created another kind of dynamic in terms of internal trauma. And I want to just say, when did I really know I was a mother? So, I'm the mother of 8 children, 4 girls and 4 boys. I became
Wow.
really conscious of the intentional act of being a mother after my fourth child. And the reality for me about being responsible for the lives of other human beings meant more than just providing food, clothing, and shelter. There's this whole psychological and emotional dynamic that we, if we are searching for our own space and place to be as human, that sometimes those things are not at the forefront when we struggle in communities where there's economic oppression and economic depression. And so for me, I realized it was so much more than just providing food, clothing, and shelter. And so it became abundantly clear to me that I wasn't present to how I allowed circumstances and a search for love to dictate the direction of my life,
Mm.
particularly with regards to having children. It was certainly the complexity, like of uncertainty. You're not certain, you're unaware about choices that brought on, the suffering that I created or that I was part of what I experienced, and the suffering that my children might have experienced because of my unawareness. So I had this drive, and I think I had a powerful intuition. So just the intuitive nature of looking at what was happening to Black people had
Mm.
me go down a road to start asking these questions. So for me, this intuitive knowing helped me and my children actually to survive. Um, and it was with a tragic incident that happened with my fourth child that I became fully present, like to the fact that parenting was a real thing and being responsible for the lives of other human beings is a sacred trust. And for our community, this system, this society doesn't see us as being sacred or even human. And so I realize that we have to see that. We have to see the sacredness of our community, our children, our families. But there's a lot of pain. There's a lot of stuff that has to be moved out of the way for us to even begin to take on possibility. So at 30 years old, I began to just consciously mother by paying attention and making choices, which I had not done before in terms of consciously saying, I have a choice. I can make a choice that serves my future and my children's future. So I want to just stop right there for a second because it didn't quite get to your question yet. But I just want to hear what you're hearing from me because sometimes I can just go on and on and on and on and on. My life is like that, on and on and on and on. And and I don't get a chance to just hear back what it is
Well,
that's being heard.
no, like it's going perfect for me. The question that I had don't even seem important anymore because it's getting to you being up to date. Because of course it has to start. What you're basically saying is it has to start with yourself. It has to start with how you are present and raising and rearing of your own kids before you can show up in the community to help others to do the same thing. Is what it sounds like to me.
Absolutely. Sounds
Yes,
that sounds about right. That sounds
yes,
about right.
yes,
All right, Amanda. So thank you so much for hearing me, not just
yes.
listening, but hearing me. I appreciate that. So,
Yeah, I
out of
appreciate you.
we all carry a lot of identities, and we have
Uh-huh.
to just for me, I have to be present to what identity is fully present right now, right? So
Yes.
that's one. Um, I'm an educator, facilitator. I do coaching and counseling, but the other identity that I want to kind of lift up in this moment, which will lead to this extraordinary event that is going to happen next on Wednesday, the 31st.
Yes, ma'am.
Um, so the other identity I want to lift up for Black women to hear is when did I know, like, that I was like PhD material, right? Or if
Okay.
I was going to become a CEO. I didn't know, I didn't chase that. It wasn't anything I chased. But when I went to graduate school, my first theory class at the graduate level was not it was like I knew I was qualified to do that. Just like I know a lot of Black women are qualified to have PhDs and they don't need to get someone else's approval or credential
Amen.
to do so,
Yes.
to know what they have. So I already knew I was qualified. So the PhD, that wasn't a dream for me. I dropped out of high school because of my circumstances and my blind choices. But somehow other people knew that something about me and my mind that I was unaware of. in terms of my intellectual capabilities. And when
Yeah.
others can show you, just be a mirror for you to see yourself and the power you have. And right now, I'm just focused on Black women, because we have, carried the womb. Our wombs have carried civilizations, and we have had to address and be with the world in ways that many have not. Many women, other, than women who've gone through these kinds of many struggles. Um,
Yeah.
so when I went to graduate school, for me, it, what it did for me was that it stimulated my intellect. Like I was intellectually stimulated. And so what I wanted was to understand the reality of what was happening in society, but especially to Black people. So my journey wasn't about my individual self. It was really like, how do we understand what's happening to Black people here in this country and then all over the world? So my focus when I took started getting the PhD was on the disaffection of young Black males from the formal schooling system in urban spaces. So I realized then that studies about young Black males did not alter the reality of young Black males, that
Mm.
it seemed to be a conspiracy to ensure that Black males, Black men, did not survive to
Mm.
produce and to be productive. So what I decided was that the system always study us. They study the oppressed people who are in these oppressed conditions, and those who are functioning sometimes at the bottom strata of society. So that's who the studies are about, right? So I decided, wow, they study us. Why aren't we studying them? So I
Mm.
decided I would study. I decided I would study up and look at white women who are the dominant group teaching in these public school systems, and looking at their emotions in spaces where they are teaching Black children. So what I began to explore was their fears and checking their caring motives and their biases and their interaction with Black children, and whether or not that serviced Black children. And of course, we know it don't, because they don't going to build the capacity of Black children to compete with their children. But more specifically, I was focused on Black male students. So that is the journey around education, like that higher education piece. Because sometimes people look at us, oh, you got a PhD. But let me just say that that does not determine the character or the quality of who I am. It's only a credential that has gotten some doors open, but it does not indicate that I'm more than those Black women who have PhDs but who haven't had the white man's, uh, what do you call the white man's stamp, so to speak.
Yeah. Yeah.
So is it okay for me to go on, or can you just kind of give me what
Well,
you
yeah,
heard just
so
then?
because yes, absolutely, because it's like you dance. Of course, you dance to the beat of your own drum, none to say the least, and just like following your intuition and following that guidance to that space that just like that was just magnificent that you found, in your studies about in your studies about how the system is set up to pretty much fail Black men. But then, like you said, but why are we not studying the dominant people who's teaching the Black men and finding out their biases and the reasons and, their fears and things of that nature? So alone, that was just, that's magnificent. And you challenged the system, by doing so. And so the strength and the courage that you had to do that, knowing that you were going to get some resistance. So that, Queen, I definitely, take my head off and yeah. So continue.
Yeah, thank you for giving that back, because I'm always uh, clear that like we're not having as an organic conversation as we could have, because I just want to share. But
the idea that we want people to hear us. And for me,
Yes.
there's a difference between a conversation and being able to communicate something. And
Yes.
when I
Yes.
ask for your reflection, is really about, did I communicate what I wanted you to hear? And you
You
gave it
did.
back to me. So I'm grateful for
Thank you.
that.
And
And
again,
then
I'm
the
grateful for you.
oh, thank you. Then the last piece is the piece on my journey to CEO of a company, right?
Yes.
Um, so this journey at the university was at the end for me when I started losing motivation really to complete the dissertation work. So, but I did complete it. I completed it, and then I began a journey of self rediscovery. Because what happens when we go to these institutions is that they take us from the natural self or the natural soul of ourselves. Like our souls get imprinted with culture, with white um, dominance and white sense of who we are
Mhm.
without us like questioning that, like questioning who are we studying? Like when I when I was in theory class, all the theorists were white males, all
Mhm.
white males. And so it's like when you go through that process, you have to come back and reconnect. So I always kind of stay connected back to the Black community. I always come back to my friends, my Pan Africanist friends, my friends, and reconnect when I was going through that process. And it was pretty grueling process. But what I realized is that when they could no longer give me what I needed to do what I said that I wanted to do, I came out and there was this journey of self discovery and a renewal of my spirit. Because what these institutions do is it kills the institutions kill our spirit. The system kills our spirit for life, for for manifesting what we are here to manifest. So what this led me to was looking through the lens of building my capacity to generate my own money, to live on without being in the clutches of the institutions and on the continuous job treadmill. So I wanted to use my skills to make a difference. Writing about the reality of what was happening to Black people was not enough for me. I wanted to more connect, with all that I had access to, and I wanted to share with my community, and I wanted to serve. So by then, I began to grow my consultant opportunities, and it was support for a little while. But I also had the freedom to create spaces that could make a difference in the healing of me and the Black community or the communities that I serve. So in 2011, I decided I needed to be more deliberate, about making a business, and since it was hard, now I'm CEO, and I don't say chief executive officer. I call it chief evolutionary officer
Oh
because
wow, I love it.
I have been on a journey of evolving, and I want
Yes.
our community to know that we are, it's like the evolution of a revolution, right? So in the
Yes.
60s and the 70s, we were on a revolutionary trend to reclaim who we were, who we are, our culture, and it's always evolving, so we always confronted with that which does not want us to evolve, and
Right.
our own self agency to say I'm here, I'm not going nowhere. And if they look at it, Black people are here, always been here and always going to be here, but it's
Yeah.
our stand. So each generation has its own, in Christianity I guess it would say, cross to bear, but each generation has to step into what they're to do for the next generation. So I'm a chief
Yes.
evolutionary officer of the T Group,
Yes.
and it's a development platform for educators, social workers, and others in human service field, and a place for healing through our T-scape platform. But our signature service is what I do masterfully, and that is designing and creating conversations. and facilitating conversations. And that's what the company is built on. We have a number of facilitators. We facilitate from a particular kind of way. And that's what I'd like to really invite people to come and experience, Black women, because this is the end of Black History Month. Black History, yeah, Black History is every day, all year round.
Right.
But this is the end of the quote Women's History Month, and what we are bringing is an experience, and that the community will be engaged in this experience. It's not a talking heads experience, even though we will have panelists with three Black women, a Black woman who is a doula and who works around reproductive health, another Black woman who is a clinical psychologist working with the mental state of Black women, and a sister who is an activist artist. She's an artist and healer. So these are the women who will be interacting with us. But then the piece that's going to be an experiential piece is we use psychodrama, which is a way to unpack certain ways that make us magical and
Mm-hmm.
unpack certain ways that makes us, stand in a place where we get stuck or where we are struggling, and thinking about how wondrous we really are when we can claim those shadows, but also
Right.
claim those victories. So that's what this
Yes. Yes.
experience is, um, coming on
Yes.
March 31st. So anyway,
Yes,
I,
I'm just so like this is such a powerful experience, and as I listen to you, like I said, I'm a student, so I'm learning so much, and as you spoken about your journey coming from motherhood into being the mother of a community, if you will, and how you have these other sisters that's also walking this path with you to enlighten, you know, the women who nurture our community. That is
that's
such a
right.
powerful experience. Yes,
Thank you.
yes,
Thank you, sis. Thank you.
yes, yes. And how can one register to be a part of this beautiful and powerful experience?
Yes. So you can actually register and connect with us from our website, thetgroup.org. You can go to our Facebook page, the T Group, the number one, and our Instagram page is the T Group. And I want the audience to know that I and I've been on this journey for a while now, and I have not stepped into the public eye because I've been doing the work, you know, and I have had this moments where I said, I just want to do the work. I don't need to be in the public's eye, but I have some tremendous people around me, like my daughter, who's the managing director of my company. Actually, three of my four daughters are actively running and supporting and developing the organization. And I just go do my what you call my sweet spot work, and they are
Okay.
helping me to set this, public persona for the organization out there. So I just want you to know that these platforms are fairly new to me, and I am going past my growing edge to be a part of it, to share with the world what we are bringing, what the T group is bringing as a
Yes,
contribution to our humanity.
but that's just to your higher self, even because they always say what we have to be uncomfortable. We have to be comfortable being
Comfortable being
uncomfortable.
uncomfortable. Yes.
Yes, yes. So
Yes.
I know that what you're about to bring, especially on Tuesday with your other sisters, is going to be so magnificent. I know that it will trigger a lot of people in our community to even take a look and be more aware of themselves. I know that whatever healing, I know that you've been healing over the years. I hear that. That's what comes to mind as I'm talking to you, light worker, even a healer in our community. So I know that this is going to be magnificent and powerful, and I'm definitely going to be in attendance. And that's the reason why I was
Awesome.
just asking for anyone else to listen, because I'm a mother as well, and I recently had to start some healing. Recently started my journey of healing and healing with my son because he
Yes.
has some traumas, and of course we all have traumas. So just trying to, face our shadows, and I might be a couple of steps ahead of him, but just helping him do those things. So I definitely understand. And when I think
Yeah.
back about, when I think back about some relationships that I've been in with, men, and just being a stepmother to, their
Yes.
children, and the role I played in their lives, but, it wasn't as magnificent as I wanted it to be, but to know that
Yes.
I just, just had some type of impact. So I definitely can, understand the reasoning and, the intention behind this movement.
Oh, so well said. And so the event is March 31st. That's on Wednesday evening, March 31st. And we will be covering areas around mental health, money and finance, food and nutrition, family, physical health, and intimate partnerships. And when we cover those things, it's not that we're going to cover all of those because we have a very limited time space. But the community will be choosing which area we are going to focus on, but we'll be able to, everyone will be able to be in the conversation, whoever registers. If they don't register, they can be on Facebook Live, and we will be paying attention to people's comments. But we definitely would encourage people to register to be in the space, and to get what they need. We also, sometimes people get triggered when their shadows start to show up, and so we
Uh-huh.
have clinicians inside of the space to support people if they are triggered by what the drama brings up. So
Oh, wow.
what traumas that the
Wow.
drama might bring up. So that's,
Wow.
that's where we're going. That's what we're doing, and we are looking forward to it. We're excited about it. And
Yeah.
one last thing, I just want to mention to the Tupac Amaru Shakur Foundation and some of the things that they're doing, because I'm working with them on their mental health initiative, and we are, just putting things in place. We right now are servicing people, but just paying attention to them this year, because they're going to be, they've done some tremendous things in communities that people will never hear of, because they're in the communities that need it the most. And so just wanted to put that out. I wanted to shout out for my friend Afeni Shakur, who I and
Uh-huh.
her helped to create that foundation, and now her daughter runs that foundation. And so I just want to put
Yeah.
a shout out to them and who they are and who she's been and who they are now and what they're doing.
Yes, and I do appreciate you doing that, because that was about to be my last question for you. So, but yeah, so I do understand that you are the director of mental health, and
Mhm.
yeah, so we appreciate what you've done in that capacity as well. So, yeah,
Thank you. Thank you so much.
thank you for joining us. Thank you so much for your presence today, and I look forward to joining you guys on 331 at 7 p.m.
Okay, looking forward to have being feeling